My name is Ava Marshall, and for most of my adult life, I avoided touching anything that belonged to my mother. Not because I didn't love her, but because loving her hurt too much. My mother, Grace, died 12 years ago, quietly, unexpectedly, and far too young. I was only 21, and for the longest time, I believed grief was something you just buried, like an old box in the attic, like a closed room in your heart, like a photograph you never dared look at again. But the universe has a cruel way of reminding you that nothing truly stays buried. It started on a cold Friday evening in late November, when I returned to my childhood home in Maine, a home I inherited but rarely visited. The house smelled of old wood, winter dust, and silence. I had come only to clean out a few forgotten drawers before putting the place up for sale. That's when I found it. A small wooden box pushed to the back of my mother's bedside table, wrapped in a yellowed handkerchief that still faintly carried her lavender perfume. My chest tightened. It had been years since I smelled that scent. Years since anything felt that familiar, or that painful. With trembling fingers, I unwrapped the cloth and found a single object inside, a photograph of my mother. She looked beautiful, standing in the backyard of this very house, sunlight touching her hair, her smile soft and gentle in the way only mothers can smile. I sank onto the bed, my throat tightening as the past came flooding back. I whispered to the picture, as if she could hear me. "Hi, Mom. It's been a while. I didn't intend to keep the photo out. I didn't intend to take it with me. I only wanted to hold her face one more time." But that night, for the first time in 12 years, I placed the picture on the nightstand beside the lamp and fell asleep in my old room, a place frozen in time with faded wallpaper and creaking floorboards. I wish I could say the night was peaceful, but it wasn't. The first shift, a soft tick-tick-tick, woke me just after 3 a.m. At first, I thought it was the house settling. Old homes make old noises. But then something colder, and much stranger, pierced through the darkness, a faint whisper. I shot upright. The whisper was too soft to make out, but too close to ignore. It wasn't coming from outside. It wasn't a dream. It was inside the room. My instinct dragged my gaze to the nightstand. The photograph was glowing, not bright, just enough for me to see it in the dim blue shadows of the room. I leaned closer, and that's when my heart stopped. The photo, the one I had looked at just hours earlier, was different. My mother wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't even looking at the camera. She was looking straight at me, her head turned slightly, her eyes wider as if she were trying to warn me about something. For a long second, I couldn't breathe. I blinked. Hard, rubbed my eyes, told myself the shadows were fooling me. But no, the expression was unmistakable. My mother had moved. Photographs don't change. Not after 12 years. Not after someone has died. My hands felt cold, my lungs tight, as if the walls of the room were closing in. Finally, I whispered, my voice cracking. "Mom?" Of course she didn't answer. But for the rest of that night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the photograph like it was a ticking bomb. When morning came and sunlight filled the room, I snatched the picture off the nightstand and studied it again. Strangely, everything looked normal now. Her smile was back. Her posture relaxed. Her eyes warm again. No fear, no warning. Nothing strange. I almost convinced myself I imagined everything. Almost. But that night, the truth came back for me. The second night, the presence behind her. Saturday night arrived with another lonely dinner, another attempt to distract myself. With late-night TV, but I couldn't stop glancing at the photo no matter how far I moved it across the room. By midnight, I forced myself into bed, telling myself it was nothing. Just stress, nostalgia, and the ghost's grief can create. But at 2:47 a.m., the ticking sound returned. Only this time, it was louder. More deliberate. Close, like fingernails tapping wood. Then came the whisper, soft. Female. So familiar, it made my blood run cold. It wasn't a word. Just a sound. A breath my mother used to make when she was trying to get my attention without calling my name. I froze. My eyes landed on the photograph again. This time, I didn't gasp. I didn't scream. I simply stared as the impossible unfolded. There was someone else in the picture. A shadow, tall and blurred, standing behind my mother in the old backyard. Not a shape I recognized. Not a person I remembered. A shadow that wasn't there before. A shadow that definitely wasn't human. My chest tightened until it hurt. I gripped the bed sheets, my breath shaking. No. The room felt colder, the air heavier, as if something had stepped inside with me. I pulled the blankets to my chin like I was a child again and whispered into the darkness. "Mom, are you trying to tell me something?" Silence. But in the photograph, my mother's expression had changed again. Her mouth, barely noticeable, looked like it was trying to form a word, one that I couldn't read yet, one she desperately wanted me to see. Sleep never came that night. A message on the back. By morning, I knew I needed to check the back of the photo. I knew something was there. My hands trembled as I flipped it over. At first, it looked blank. Then, as sunlight hit the surface, faint letters appeared, as if written in invisible ink. 4 words. Ava, he is here. My blood went cold. He? Who? And how did these words appear on a picture taken 12 years ago? I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop the cry rising in my chest. I wasn't imagining it anymore. This was real. Something, or someone, was trying to reach me through that photograph. And whatever he meant, it wasn't good. The night the house remembered. I didn't leave the house that morning. I should have. Any sane person would have. But grief has a strange way of pulling you back into the fire you're trying to escape. And whatever was happening in that photograph, it felt connected to my mother. Connected to something she never told me. I spent the entire morning pacing the kitchen, clutching the photo like it was a living thing that might whisper something new if I held it long enough. Every time I glanced at it, my mother's smile was back. Warm, soft, unchanged. But the message on the back, Ava, he is here. Those 4 words had burned into my mind. Who was he? And why did I suddenly feel like I wasn't alone in the house? The house felt different. By late afternoon, the air inside the house had grown heavy. Not physically, but emotionally. Like the house was remembering me, breathing around me. Every corner, every doorway, every creak felt familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. I walked past my childhood bedroom, expecting to see my old posters, but finding only emptiness. I walked past the living room, where my mother used to knit on the couch and hum softly under her breath. And then, I walked past her locked study. A door she always kept closed. A door I never dared touch after she died. The handle felt cold when my fingers brushed it. Unnaturally cold. I stepped back. Not tonight, I whispered. But the house felt like it disagreed. A visit from the neighbor. At around 5 p.m., there was a sudden knock on the front door that nearly made my heart jump out of my chest. When I opened it, I saw Mrs. Whitcomb, our neighbor from across the street. Now in her 70s, thin as a twig, her eyes sharp in a way that always made me feel like a child again. Ava Marshall, she said, her voice shaky but firm. You should have told me you were back. I forced a smile. Sorry, I didn't think I'd be staying long. She pushed past me, like she owned the place. She always did that. Her eyes scanned the house like she expected to find something, or someone. You're here alone? She asked. Yes. A long pause. She exhaled. Then you need to be careful. Something twisted in my stomach. Careful of what? Before I could ask, her eyes fell on the photograph lying on the kitchen table. She froze, her face drained of color. Then, quietly, oh no. I swallowed. What? She stepped closer, staring at the picture as though she were afraid of it. Ava, she whispered, I've seen that photo before. I frowned. Of course you have. My mother kept it. No, she cut me off. I mean, I saw it after she died. A chill slid down my spine. She came to me one night. Mrs. Whitcomb continued. Just a week before she passed. She said, if Ava ever finds the backyard photo, never let her keep it in the house. The room spun for a moment. My voice came out small, fragile. Why? She said it was the only thing. Her words trailed off. The only thing what? The only thing he could use. My breath caught. There it was again. That word that made every hair on my body stand up. Who is he? I asked. Her eyes filled with a fear I didn't understand. A presence your mother once told me about. A shadow, she said, followed her for years. A man she never saw face to face, but always felt behind her. My knees weakened. I had to grip the table to stay standing. She said the backyard photo. Mrs. Whitcomb swallowed hard. Is where she felt him the strongest. The same photo where the shadow now stood behind her. The same photo that had changed. The same photo warning me that he was here. Before I could say anything, a deep thud echoed from upstairs. We both jumped. Her elderly hand squeezed my arm. Ava, you need to leave this house. But I shook my head. No, I need to know what this is. What my mother was trying to tell me. Another thud. Heavier, like a footstep. Mrs. Whitcomb backed away from the staircase. She looked terrified now. Your mother was right, she whispered. He's awake. After she left. By dusk, she hurried across the street, refusing to stay even one more minute. I closed the door, and suddenly felt the weight of the house pressing down again. Rooms felt darker, hallways colder, the shadows deeper. I picked up the photograph and stared at my mother's face. Her smile was still there, but I didn't trust it anymore. Not after what the photo had done. Not after what I'd heard. Not after what Mrs. Whitcomb told me. And then, while the house grew colder around me, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown caller. I hesitated. My hands felt ice cold. I answered. At first, I heard nothing. Just static, soft, crawling, like the sound of old radio static, mixed with breathing. My heart hammered. "Hello?" I whispered, more static. Then, "Ava." I froze. It was a woman's voice, soft, broken, familiar in a way that tore something inside me. "Don't." The call cut off. I stood there, trembling so violently. I had to put the phone down. I knew that voice. It couldn't be. It was impossible. She was gone. She had been gone for 12 years. But the voice on the other end sounded exactly like my mother. And she was trying to warn me. Again, the photograph changes again. Night fell faster than usual. I couldn't bring myself to turn on any lights. I didn't want the house to see me. Or maybe I didn't want to see what else had changed. But eventually, I forced myself to pick up the photo again. My breath caught. The shadow behind my mother wasn't just a blur now. It had shape. Shoulders, arms. A faint outline of a face. Too long, too hollow, too dark. Like something that had been waiting, year after year, for me to come back. But that wasn't the worst part. My mother wasn't looking at the camera anymore. She wasn't even looking at me. She was looking over her shoulder, at the shadow behind her. Her mouth, clearly this time, was open in a silent scream. I stumbled backward, my whole body shaking. No, no, no. But the house responded. A loud bang against the upstairs wall made me jump. A second bang. Harder, closer. Like someone walking through the walls, walking toward me. The whispering returned, not from the photo this time, but from the darkness above. A whisper of a woman. A whisper of my mother. "Ava, run." The house went silent. Too silent. And then I heard it. A slow, heavy footstep on the second floor landing. Another, and another. Moving toward the stairs. Toward me. Toward the photograph. Toward whatever truth my mother had left behind. The final sign. My breath shook as I backed into the kitchen. The footstep above creaked again. I grabbed the photograph with both hands, ready to throw it. Break it. Burn it. Anything. To stop whatever was happening. But when I flipped it over one more time, there was new writing on the back. Not faint. Not hidden. Clear. Fresh. As if someone had written it seconds ago. One word. One command. "Don't look up." And at that exact moment, the footsteps stopped, right above me, standing still. Waiting. Breathing. I didn't look up. I didn't dare. The hallway where footsteps never echoed. I didn't sleep that night. Even when my body begged for rest, my mind kept circling back to the voice I had heard behind the mirror. The voice that sounded like my mother, but wasn't my mother. By the time the sun came up, the house had already begun to feel different. Warmer in some places, strangely colder in others, as if something was moving through the walls. Something that had been waiting. Something that had finally realized I could hear it. The morning that didn't feel like morning. I walked into the hallway expecting the usual stillness, but the air felt thick, like walking through something invisible and heavy. The scent was different too. Not the dusty old air I'd smelled yesterday. It smelled like flowers. Not fresh ones, but wilted ones. Like they had been cut days ago, placed in a vase, then forgotten in a closed room. I followed the scent without realizing it, until it led me to the very hallway I always avoided. The long, narrow one between the living room and the basement door. A hallway where no footsteps ever echoed. Not mine. Not anyone's. Even the sound of my breathing felt swallowed whole. I stopped halfway, suddenly freezing in place, because for the first time since yesterday, I wasn't alone. The shape at the end of the corridor. It was faint at first, a soft blur, like heat rising off pavement. But as my eyes adjusted, the blur sharpened into a shape. A figure. A woman, standing perfectly still at the far end of the corridor, her back to me. Her hair long and tangled like it had grown for years without ever being cut. A cold shiver ran down my entire spine. She didn't move, not even a twitch. Just stood there, as if she had been placed exactly where I could see her. And for a full minute, I genuinely believed my heart had stopped beating. Then she spoke, softly, slowly, but not turning around. "You shouldn't have answered the mirror." My throat tightened. My voice barely came out. Who are you?" She didn't reply. Instead, her head tilted, not fully, but just enough that I could see the edge of her cheek. It was sunken, pale, lifeless, like something that had been underground too long. And then she whispered again. "You woke me up." The hallway shifted. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Just once. But that was enough. Because when they came back on, she wasn't at the end of the hallway anymore. She was standing 5 feet in front of me, still not facing me, still silent, still impossibly still. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the wall, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't even steady myself. "Please," I whispered, "just tell me what you want." Her shoulders rose, like she was taking a breath she didn't need, and finally, she began to turn toward me. But not fully. Only her face moved. Her body stayed facing away. I didn't know it was possible for a human face to twist like that, to rotate beyond what bones should allow, but I watched it happen, helpless, frozen. Her eyes met mine. They were wrong, completely wrong, because they weren't eyes at all. They were reflections, like mirrors, like my own eyes staring back at me, only older, emptier, broken. And she whispered, "You already know what I want." The photograph that should not exist. The lights flickered again, and she vanished, gone as if she'd been erased from existence. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. But the hallway was no longer empty. A single photograph now lay at the far end, exactly where she had first appeared. I crawled toward it, every inch of me trembling. When I picked it up, my blood turned to ice, because the picture was of me, standing in this very house, in this very hallway, only I couldn't remember when it was taken. And behind me, in the photo, was the woman. Her face turned toward me, with those mirrored eyes. But the worst part wasn't the picture. It was what was written on the back. Just 3 words. Written in handwriting that looked eerily like mine. I am you. The house breathed. For the first time since I'd arrived, I heard it. A deep, slow exhale coming from somewhere inside the walls. Like the house itself had lungs. Like it had been holding its breath all this time. And it had finally decided to breathe again. The night I finally understood. I didn't remember walking back into the living room. I didn't remember sitting on the edge of the couch, the photograph clenched so tightly in my hand that the edges cut into my skin. All I remembered was the silence, a silence that didn't feel empty, a silence that watched me. The house was no longer waiting. It was listening. It wanted something. Something it believed I already knew. And as much as I wanted to run, to escape, to drive far away and never look back, I couldn't. Because the more I stared at the photograph, the more one horrible truth began forming, piece by piece, in the darkest corners of my mind. This wasn't the first time I had been here. This wasn't the first time she had spoken to me. This wasn't the first time the house had breathed. And somehow, I had forgotten everything. The walls whispered. I felt it before I heard it. A vibration, low, almost subsonic, passing through the floorboards, up the legs of the couch, up my spine. Then a whisper, soft, smooth. Female. Come back to where it started. My grip tightened around the photograph. No, I whispered. I don't want to see. But the whisper continued, gentle and patient, like a mother comforting a frightened child. You already saw. You just don't remember. The lights dimmed. The air grew colder. And the hallway, the same one where she had appeared, began to shift. Not visibly. Not physically. But in a deeper way. A way that made every instinct in my body scream in warning. It was pulling me. Calling me, and I knew exactly where it wanted me to go. The locked door. The room I had been avoiding since the moment I set foot in this house. The room that shouldn't have existed. The room that was never supposed to open. The door waited. I stood in front of it again. The same door whose handle had turned on its own. The same door I had sworn never to touch. But now, it was open, not wide. Just enough for a sliver of darkness to peek out. A cold draft drifted from inside, carrying with it that same scent of wilted flowers. I didn't want to go inside. Everything in me told me not to. But something stronger, something deep inside me, pushed me forward. The house wasn't trapping me. It was guiding me. I stepped inside. The room of forgotten things. It wasn't large, just a small, square room with peeling wallpaper and no windows. But the moment I stepped in, my breath caught in my throat, because the room was filled with objects I recognized. A cracked snow globe I lost when I was 12. A green scarf I misplaced in college. A keychain my mother bought me as a kid. And there, on an old wooden chair, was a small, leather-bound journal. My journal, the one I lost 5 years ago. My hands shook as I reached for it. The leather was cold, unnaturally cold. And when I opened it, my handwriting stared back at me. My words, my memories, my fear, written in frantic, uneven lines. I came here before. I met her before. She told me the truth. I wasn't ready to hear it. The next line made my heart stop. If I ever return, don't let me forget again. Don't let me remember everything at once. It will break me. I felt sick. My vision blurred. I flipped to the last page. Just one sentence. A warning. A confession. A plea. She is me in the future. The woman returned. The moment I read it, the room darkened. The temperature dropped so fast I saw my breath. I turned slowly. And she was standing there, in the doorway, silent, still, watching me with those mirrored, hollow eyes. Only now I understood. Those reflections weren't empty. They were memories. My memories. The ones I had erased. The ones I had buried. The ones she remembered for me. My voice cracked as I whispered, "What? What happened to me?" She didn't speak. She only raised her hand and pointed to the mirror on the wall. A mirror I hadn't noticed before. A mirror covered in dust and scratches. A mirror that wasn't actually a mirror at all. A mirror that was a window. I took a step closer. My reflection was wrong. So wrong, because it wasn't my current face staring back at me. It was older, worn, tired, broken. My future self, the woman. She stood behind my reflection, her hand resting on my shoulder. And then her voice whispered in my ear, not from behind me, but from inside the mirror. "I came to warn you." I swallowed hard. Warn me about what? Her mirrored eyes softened, filled with something like grief. "About who you become if you don't leave this house tonight." The truth I never wanted. She stepped closer, still inside the mirror, still impossible. "You came here years ago, looking for answers, trying to understand why you felt empty, why your life kept falling apart." I shook my head. "No, I don't remember any of that. You forgot. You forced yourself to forget, because the house showed you everything, and the truth broke you." My knees felt weak. "What truth?" Her voice trembled. My voice, but older, sadder. "The emptiness you feel isn't from the world forgetting you. It's from you forgetting yourself. The pieces you lost, you left them here." I looked around the room. The toys, the clothes, the journal. My memories, my forgotten pieces. "If you stay," she whispered, "you will lose the rest, and you will become me." The choice. The mirror flickered. The house exhaled again. The air thickened, pressing against my chest. She reached her hand toward me from the other side of the glass. Not to pull me in, but to push me away. "You must leave, before the house decides to keep you again." I shook my head as tears blurred my vision. "I don't want to forget anymore." Her mirrored eyes softened in a way that broke me. "You won't. Not this time." The room began to collapse. Not physically, but in the way dreams fall apart. The walls dimmed, the objects faded, the air vibrated. She whispered one last thing. "This is your last chance to be whole again." The exit. I stumbled out of the room, the floor trembling beneath me. The hallway felt alive, tense, urging me toward the front door. Every light in the house flickered violently, like the house was fighting its own decision. I ran. For the first time, I ran. Down the hall, past the living room, past the mirror where she first spoke. I didn't look back, because I felt it. Her hand, my future hand, pressed gently against my back, pushing me toward the exit. Not trapping me, saving me. The front door blew open. Cold air rushed in, and I stepped outside, just as the house went silent, completely silent, as if it had finally released what it had been holding. The final reflection. I reached my car and turned back just once. The windows were dark. The house was still, and in the front window, I saw her, my future self, but not the broken one, not the ghostly one, a peaceful one. She looked at me with gentler eyes, whole eyes, alive eyes, and she nodded once, slowly, gratefully, as if she had waited years for this moment. I whispered into the cold night air, "Thank you." And as I drove away, for the first time in my life, I felt complete, not haunted, not empty, not afraid. Complete, because I finally understood. The house didn't take pieces of me. It kept them safe, until I was ready to take them back.